fought for the second liberation. We were students. Some of us were beaten, others died at that time. It wasn't a lesser fight. So thank you for giving me that opportunity again. But my very issue that I think Professor Kibwana would advise us, His Excellence, is the Senate. Whatever has been done as the Senate, can it be reversed at the Assembly? Because if it can be reversed, I can tell you, because the Senate castigated the Assembly, it will be time for payback. Thank you very much.
Okay, so Kenyan lady.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Kibwana, for joining us. You know, I don't think I want to speak much of what has been happening, but the mood in the room can tell you that we cannot trust anybody. Okay, I do not think that there is anybody in the room still who is trying to downplay the position or the achievements that we have seen over time being achieved by the senior opposition politicians. But according to what is happening right now, going by what is happening right now, which is very dire, our country is in dire need for leadership. Us as the young people, the millennials, the Gen Zs, and everybody right now, Kenyans, I don't feel me as the Kenyan lady that like there's anybody that we can trust so far. So that could be my best statement, opening statement coming from the current happenings. Now, going on to my main questions. Um, the one that really concerns me is, yes, we know there has been looting that has been going on. Yes, we know that obviously people have been flaunting money. Our politicians have been flaunting money. A politician that's making I don't know how much they make is out there flaunting 20 million to give in a Harambe. Another one is accompanied by fleets and fleets and fleets and fleets of of Gazlas. I don't even know where to start with this, but the loot that has been stolen from the people, I do not know how to go about that, but I feel it should be returned to the people, because that is the same exact way, because of us being either blinded, because of Kenyans being not having the route of which we can recover, which majority of the time we expect the people that are speaking for us maybe will be in the opposition or whatever it is. I mean, I don't think there's an opposition right now, but helping the movement right now. Here are my thoughts, and I want you to let us know whether this is something that is possible, and if it is also protected by the Constitution, because I am very, very interested. All of us are interested, much as we shelved the 2024 finance bill. Our interest is also to pay off those debts, because the last thing that you want is to not pay off the debts, because it will be in a worse position. But how do we go about it? We need to recover this money. We need to recover the 200 million that was paid to some royalty private jet. That is literally 2.4 million every hour of our taxes that were used to pay for this private jet. How much of that bill can we foot with that money? Those are just but examples. So this is what I was wondering, Professor. Is there any provision still in the probably us being able to have the right to speech, the rights to gather, the right to share ideas as the public, the right to spaces like we have right now? Is there a way that we can have ni kama bunge la wananchi? It's like an independent jury, an independent, a place where panaweza kuwa na kongamano la individuals, and also we can have lawyers, attorneys, whereby we can be able to have a depository, because there are a lot of, we've had this discussion before, especially when Okia Omtata was here, Senator Okia Omtata was here, that there are so many documents out there which are very incriminating, but yet we cannot use it in the mainstream courts because they are not allowed. Because you are told, oh, how did you obtain that document? How this document is supposed to be, you're supposed to obtain it legally by asking from the person. Now, listen, how do I go to the president and ask for the document that he used to procure a $200 million jet? How do I get that? However, through other means, we can have a space or an area, or an area, it can be online, where people can anonymously be depositing documents without being incriminated. The thing is, through the platform, we'll have the lawyers, we'll have an independent jury, we'll have members of the public that can be selected, or they can volunteer, and we'll be able to look at these documents and actually vet them and see whether they are actual documents. And if they are actual documents, what can prevent us from prosecuting and from asking for our money? Because what has gotten us here today is the looting. And because of this looting, we are not able to pay for our debt. Look, like for instance, we're talking about the Eurobond the other day. When somebody went to trace how the Eurobond money went, they were able to see how the money was actually given, right? How the money was released. However, it was at some point, I think it was intercepted, and it went to Qatar, and then from there's no more information. This information should be made public through some form of a depository, where we can have attorneys of the Constitution, we can have attorneys, watu tu wajitolee. And then through that platform, we will be able to vet people, we'll be able to vet documents, and then we can see how these documents can go mainstream, and we can actually recover our loot, or we can prosecute these people and the money can be returned to us. I don't know if I am making any sense, and I'm speaking this in parallel too. After all the skirmishes, after all that happened during the maandamano, we know, and everybody can attest, that we have established a way into which we are able to compensate the families of the, those that have been really bereaved, those who have been affected, the ones that have been in the hospital. So all we are doing when we are able to is contributing to the mchanga, and then we do have a person on the other side, 2 or 3 people, execute and implement these funds in a way that is very, very reliable. So why can't we have a different platform still working and very effectively working on planning and implementing ways into which we can recover our loot and somehow be able to pay our debts somehow. I will yield from there. Thanks.
Okay, sawa. Solo, do you have something to say?
Yes, I do have something for Professor. So, Professor, thank you for giving us your time and kind of enlightening us on matters constitution and how far we've fought. I concur with the previous speaker about what can we do to bring back the loot, because that is the main point. We've been talking and doing a lot of things, but until and unless we bring those money back up, we will be still recycling the problem. So my other question for me is the judiciary. You talk of 2010 constitution. Is there a way in which this constitution, we can fight for it to be implemented in totality? Because we've seen some bills are being brought in pieces, but is there something we can do? Can we have a push? Is it something which is possible? We can push this to have this constitution implemented in totality as part of our demand as Gen Zs. And then my last question to you, I don't want to bombard you, I got a lot, but the judiciary. We know the judiciary is rotten, but they are rotten because they have to do the bidding of the executive. Is there something we can do constitutionally to protect the judiciary, and how can we participate in selecting the judiciary representatives that are sitting there as judges, and can we be part of that activism to be sure that when a judge or a chief justice is being selected, can our X platform be part of vetting, not only for the judiciary, but also even for these MPs and CESs? Is this something we can do legally, that before somebody goes there, because they say public participation, but they don't listen to us. We want them to be in a position where they listen. And this is what brought this financial bill 2024. We told them we don't want it, but they don't listen. Is there a way in which we must be incorporated in making sure that any selection to public figures can be vetted and should go through us as part of the requirement of the Constitution? Thank you so much. And that is my question for you.
Asante sana. Sando ko hapo. Cubic, are you there? Okay,
Yeah,
sawa
yeah,
sawa.
Raymond, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, sawa.
Yeah, I did ask a question earlier about the quickest way to if the any lawyers here in the room can tell us what is the quickest way we can cut off, or we can lower these elected officials' salaries. Do we need a referendum, or is this something that they need to agree themselves to do?
Okay, so basically the process of reducing their salaries, eh?
Yes, that's my concern.
Aya, sawa sawa. I think if there is no any other person wa kuuliza swali, kuna watu kidogo tu wamecomplain kwa DM yangu, si accept hizo mics zao. It is not that ninakataa guys, ni vile sometimes siwaoni, unless maybe nikutumie mic ndio unaweza kuingia direct. So please follow me, follow pia KOT ndio aweze kukuona. Pia yeye haoni watu wengi, ananiambia anaona like 6 people, na kuna pia watu wana complain sana sana. So thank you. Professor, I think mic ni yako sasa, because hatuna mtu mwingine. So Eric Dhauri, karibu kwa space. Yeah, karibu.
Raymond, I think also tunaweza shuka to allow other people to come in. Naona speakers zimejaa. That's why.
Yeah, actually kama umeuliza tu swali unaweza kushuka chini, and then kuna watu wengine pia wanataka kupanda hapo hivyo, wengi sana. But kama unataka kukaa hapo juu unaweza kukaa. Patiane comments zako. Karibu Professor.
Sorry. Can we stay so that if there's any clarity that's needed from our questions, we are able to directly ask? Is that okay?
Yeah, that is okay.
Thank you very much for those questions, and I'm happy Eric is also around, and some of the legal questions he will be able to assist us. The reduction of salaries, public salaries are supposed to be the purview of dealing with those ones, setting them up and all that is the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. And although sometimes even Parliament, refuses, and sometimes they say that their salaries are supposed to be determined by the Public Service Commission, but according to the Constitution, it is that body. And if that body was minded during the reviews of salaries, because they do that, and there's been a lot of talk about the wage bill management, then they can be able to say that this is the new direction, and also with policy from the government, because this has been one of the demands, that if, for example, it's a member of parliament and you earn 1 million shillings, and you have the mortgage, the health, the car, we have all those things. That is, and we are one of the countries where political leaders are paid the most in the world. So that is really an issue that we need to revisit. And when we talk about even paying public debt and managing the budget, those are areas. And this benchmarking, when people go abroad and they have to pay, they are paid per diems every day of a lot of money. Actually, the salary and also sitting allowances, like you are supposed to to represent people, to legislate, to oversight. And when you sit in parliament, you're also given an allowance. If you sit in committees, you are given an allowance. If you go out, instead of whatever hotel you are in being paid and for your food and all that, there are those astronomical allowances. So with policy and with the government now doing what it has promised to do in terms of reducing those salaries, it is something that SRC can do. What is the quickest way of getting elected officials out? The recall law for MPs is now mature in terms of, although there's provision in the Constitution, and I remember in the other discussion with Omtata, was arguing that what is in the ordinary, what was in the ordinary law contradicts the Constitution in terms of recall. But I also argued that since it's 2 years, and the 2 years are ending in 2 years are ending in August, that's next month. Those who feel that they need to recall their MPs and their MCAs can exactly do that, of course, following the Constitution. And it will be another matter to deal with the law which Omtata argued is unconstitutional for later. But for now, actually, the time is right. And that's why I think there are some constituencies which are already planning to do exactly that. And of course, there is a contradiction, because the opposition, like ODM, said that they were going to recall 6 of the MPs who voted yes. But if ODM was to go into coalition again with the government, so it really one has also to look at such issues so that one is kind of consistent. Now, when it comes to how constitutionally the president can resign, the president can be impeached, of course, following the Constitution, and if is absent for whatever reason, then the deputy president first becomes the acting for 60 days, so that there is an election. And of course, when there was no IBC, and there's not going to be an IBC for a while, because the panel is given 90 days, I believe, to finalize the selection. I think 90 days, and indeed, yes, 90 days, and indeed, Parliament can even extend the 90 days of the panel constituting the commission. So even another early election would be problematic in the absence of the IBC. I think it is Muguna who has argued that acting on Article 1, if citizens were able to push the government out, then there would be a transitional authority. But again, I don't think that the details have been farmed out constitutionally how that would be created, so that, you know, all over the place, this person is not saying I want to be the transition authority, another one saying I want to be in the transition authority. So that requires, you know, more thought. And indeed, also the argument was it is that one which can, that transition authority which can decide on which is a proper IBC, which will be truly independent. But I think, although there is invocation of Article 1, and Eric might also speak on this, there is invocation of Article 1, but the mechanism of establishing a transition authority, the mechanism of how you appoint people to it, and to be sure that you don't excite the military and all that kind of stuff, those are issues to further discuss and build more consensus. But I feel those who are focusing on 2027 and those who are focusing on Ruto must go now. I think in terms of the conflict of interest, I think basically even some of the politicians that usually are more trusted are going back towards saying that even when you are in government, including, you know, your relatives and all that, you can trade with government. And the argument is that government gives most work. And therefore, that is why, you know, there should be leeway for people to, you know, to do so and to declare and all that kind of stuff. But that actually destroys the conflict of interest law. It is as ESCC argued, it is better that it is not even passed in that form, because it is militating against what was supposed to be cured. And you see, the more we emphasize that most business must be done with government, the more we don't expand the private sector. Because there's still this continued focus, particularly by our policymakers, that most business must be done with the government, most, you know, tendering and all that kind of stuff. And even focusing on, like, among the young people, focusing on the question of social entrepreneurship, because all these problems that we have, it is possible to solve a lot of them by creatively having social enterprises which are run you know, by young people and by other people. So I think the conflict of interest law must be called out, and the National Assembly must be told that that's a no-go area. Because if one of the issues that actually keeps on recurring in terms of what agencies are fighting for is to demise corruption, then it can't be proper that that law is vandalized, so to speak. Is vandalized, and it's very, very unfortunate that has happened. And every time there's been this push for, I talked about open contracting, but there's been this push of every company must really explain who is behind it, the beneficial interest. And I think that is one. There was also that question of where, you know, an MCA or, you know, people using proxies and so on. The law to show that who is behind every company. Again, that is a very, very critical thing for us to accept. That also must be agreed on. The asset recovery and that noble idea of having an independent jury of citizens to shadow the asset recovery unit because the asset recovery under the economic the Crimes Act, it actually recovers, but it has to go to court, and then the court has to accept that any property you have has been purchased through proceeds of corruption and all that. So I think that's an important, that would be an important thing, because the X spaces can begin to have, if it is something about asset recovery, so that there is that conversation there, and to also target the asset recovery, and then say we have gathered information that so and so, this is money that they didn't have. Even when, for example, now we say wealth declarations, because every 2 years, I think, public servants must declare what wealth they have. Like when you get into the position, 2 years later, it should even be 1 year. And then if you find that somebody has got unexplained wealth, then the asset recovery institution is told to look at you, and also this independent jury that was suggested. I think that's a good citizen innovation, because under Article 1, people are beginning to create a people's government, which is going to also shadow all government entities for public accountability. So I accept that. And actually, those who are abroad, you can follow in the countries, like if it's a country which we have done a contract with, their laws are better in terms of availing information. So you can tell them that we want this information, and even use their court processes, their institutions, to get that kind of information and bring it back home. But this issue of where one has got wealth from, it is an issue that requires to be followed, because people must get to a position where they understand that you can't profit from the government if you're working with it. Accept that you're coming here to get a salary, and that's it. It was the Ndegwa report just after independence, which said that civil servants could do business, because the constitution was clear. When you have this job, you are not allowed to do, any other. You are not supposed to get into the private sector. And there are some companies, there are some countries, especially in the Arab world, where when you get into government, whatever businesses you were doing are now run by an entity of government, so that you don't do, you are not supposed to do business whatsoever until your tour of duty is completed, so that there isn't this conflict. Of interest. How can we implement the constitution in its totality? There this civil society, the Kenya Human Rights Commission, the Katiba Institute, and the many who have really done us proud in terms of all the time litigating when the constitution is infringed. And I think that is an important thing to do. And these X spaces require to connect with them so that they can give them a push in terms of things that they take to court. But on the whole, one of the principal reason for government is to follow the constitution. So in actual fact, we shouldn't even have a situation where a government is being forced to follow the constitution. If there are lapses, they should be minor. And then when the government is told that you have done wrong here, it quickly corrects. And if people have to be taken to court or whatever, that happens. But I think for me, this Gen Z movement, its major focus and thrust, therefore, is to ensure that Kenya becomes a country where the constitution is implemented to the letter. And when we get to a situation of changing it, again, there is real consensus. We don't have changes just because people feel they need changes that will help them. The judiciary, actually, particularly when I worked at the counties, was very helpful in terms of protecting devolution, because national government did many things wanting to undermine devolution that has happened from 1963 when the first edition of devolution was cancelled. So yes, there is also, like everywhere else in the public sector, some corruption, but that's one arm that requires, more engagement, so that when there are bad things they are doing, they are told, and also they are supported when there is the onslaught of the executive. But many constitutional things, like BBI was stopped by the judiciary, things that are not legal, the judiciary takes, and it has prevented unconstitutional constitutional changes. But again, whether it is the executive, it is the legislature, it's the judiciary, it's the independent commissions and offices, when they do wrong things, they must be called. They must be called out. I think one thing about Raila, I think one has to acknowledge, and this was said, that historically, he has been quite helpful in this country, and even suffered detention, I think, for 8-9 years, and all that kind of stuff. He almost got, in 82, he almost got executed because of being associated with the coup. But again, given where we are, one has to be extremely sensitive to the demands of Gen Zs. Because, in today's meeting at KCC, when one sees ODM, one sees, it's like they are begging for inclusion in a coalition government, in a government of national unity. And if that happens without the Gen Z saying that this is what they want, and I'm not sure that's what they want, then that would not be a good thing. But where he has also helped this country from, that can't be denied him. His father, Jaramogi, was even really a major actor in our structure, in our constitutional political structure, alongside Pio Kagia, and all those all those others. Now the judiciary attacked, and I think the Chief Justice's office was attacked. There's usually a judiciary protection unit of police, but somehow they were absent during that. Hopes that going forward they are going to protect these officers that are supposed to be protected. I think in my reading of the IBC, these changes that happened, and Eric will also tell us, there isn't that thing about cars being, or vehicles being, polling stations in some instances, but I want us to look at the elections amendment bill. I think that's where normally it would be. But I have not looked at it, so I don't want to comment to say that it is there or it's not there. But I saw that Kioni said it was somewhere there. But in the IBC, I've looked at the IBC. I've just, as we talked now, I have quickly looked at the IBC amendments, the IBC bill of 4th March 2024, unless at the end there were some changes introduced, which take into account stuff like that. But normally, those kinds of provisions should be in the election amendment bill. We talked about the conflict of interest, about the National Assembly saying, this is not allowed and so on. The party, one of the problems with our political parties is they are not ideological. They are basically owned by people. They are mostly ethnic based. They're ethnic based, and therefore most of them don't have long staying power. They are electoral units, and then after elections, that's it. Very few survive any election And therefore, unless, for example, the Gen Z comes up with a manifesto, unless, for example, they think about whether they want to have a
Guys, looks like we lost the speaker. Is Professor still on the mic?
Raymond, I can't
Hello?
hear Professor.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, Prof, you're back.
You can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear Prof. Bwana.
Okay.
Proceed.
Yeah. So going forward, I think, but maybe that's something that the movement will think about. But the route of independent candidates, it's an interesting route, but they may think about, either adopting a party, having a party, or adopting several parties which are sympathetic to what the agency likes. The civic education is very critical, and that's why through these spaces and every other way, one has to reach as many people so that they're at the same level with you guys. The IBC, I talked about how, given where we are in terms of this law that has been ascended to, and given that the panel they will use competitive methods to the panel. For people to come into the panel, a competitive method is used. So it is up to Gen Z, this movement, to look at the people who come to the panel and later the people who apply to become commissioners, so that it's really people of significant integrity, and to be very, very clear that those are the people who are going to give us a commission that can be in charge of truly free, fair, transparent elections, as the Constitution says we should have. Of course, we'll remember that in 2022, when after there was the mandamano because of the question of the elections, the people who died were not. That issue was forgotten because I think ODM did go to court. They said that they will be compensated and so on, and they were forgotten. And I was saying this because we saw during this time the Gen Z movement itself trying to assist the families and those who are in hospitals and so on. So that's also something else to keep on reminding, that even when people get hurt and all that and die and so on, when you don't follow up, then people have a bad taste in the mouth. They are saying that it's like we are being used. And when we get, the political class goes and talks and forgets us. So this was extremely commendable. What Anifa and Mwangi and Hussein and all of you, what you did in terms of also crowd funding, and you have been crowd sourcing your ideas, and that has assisted a lot. Therefore, the last question, I think you cannot trust anybody, and that was said emphatically, that you cannot trust anybody to get into leadership. Meaning that the Gen Zs are once beaten, twice shy. They really don't want to hear names being floated and all that kind of stuff. But I want to say, even if you don't trust the older people, you must trust yourselves. if I can remember historically, Muammar Gaddafi became Libya's leader at 27. Thomas Sankara led Burkina Faso at 34. There was the president of Madagascar, Andri, who was actually a former event organizer. And he initially became president of the High Transition Authority of Madagascar at 35. Martin Luther King, who led America's civil rights movement, did so at 26, started doing so at 26. Sebastian Kurz, who became Chancellor of Austria, did so at age 31. Sanna Marin became Finland's prime minister at 34. Jacinda Kate Laurel became New Zealand's prime minister at 37, and she had been elected as a member of parliament at 28. So these examples confirm that it is a myth that young people cannot occupy the highest offices of the country. So it is up to you to prepare yourselves in all ways and know it's a long. We need to have a country that is, and the constitution is implemented to the full. The economy is democratized, and young people, have a major role in their country, and that's my prayer. Thank you.
May I please ask for clarity through the host? Please.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll ask after you.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Please proceed.
Okay. I think probably Eric is able to answer to this or respond to this. According to the election laws, which I think we discussed when Okiya Omtata was here, Senator Okiya Omtata was here, he said that because me hearing that we have to wait another 90 days for the IEBC to settle, to get reconstituted, to get this done, that done, he raised something that we thought on the panel, we thought the people that had attended that meeting that maybe could be the easiest way for us. Can't the presiding and the returning officers at the county level, can't they call for elections? That's one thing I would like clarified. And then the other thing about trust, Professor Kibuda, we do not trust the political elite. That's what we are trying to put forward. We do not trust the political elite. And amongst us, amongst the Gen Zs, the millennials, we do have leaders. We do have courage. We just need to find our structure. We just need to find our way up there. So I will yield with with that. Thank you.
Okay, I
Uh,
also need a certain clarification here, kindly. Maybe Eric or Kivuda can answer me. I was suggesting if we can have a transitional council that can work parallel to this government. And since of course saizi kila mtu ni, we don't trust this government at all these airlines. So can we have a transitional council that that will be that will have maybe people activists there, we'll have maybe the people from the civil society and also Gen Z. Manake, we are the founders of this revolution.
okay, one more question from my end. Now that we know that Ruto has violated the constitution so many times, can we indict him, or do we need again another referendum to come up with laws? Because it seems right now that he can suspend the constitution anytime he wants and do whatever he wants. Is he above the law at this moment in time? Can we indict him, or does he have to be impeached before we can do that? Thanks.
Do you have any other person who has a question, or we can break and bring more people here? And before that, I can see Dr. Ezekiel Mtua in the house, the MCK CEO. Uh, Doctor, welcome on this panel. And if you wish to actually participate and give us your views and advise us, the young people, you can always request for the microphone. Yeah. Otherwise, let's continue. To one.
Um, my host, if you can hear me. Yeah, so one message to Dr. Ezekiel. I think you have the same message as Raila Odinga to have the dialogue with the president. We are not ready for that. He knows what we want, and he knows what to do. There is no ground for any conversation between us and the president. Thanks.
Okay, so Professor can take over. Professor Eric, the floor is yours.
Hello. Yes. I think I'll answer some, and then Eric can also bring his legal knowledge to bear. Yes, I remember because I was also in that space with the Omtata. Omtata argued that returning officer, according to the minor KI case, returning officers, actually the results are from the polling station. And then in the constituency, the returning officer is able to take the results to the IBC at whatever center, and then IBC is able to announce them, and so he said that even without the commissioners, it is possible to do an election, but I think it's Articles 88, subsection 4 or so, which gives the role of the IBC, the commission itself, in terms of supervising, directing elections, referenda, and all that, registering people, doing all the works. It gives leadership to those. And because all those things have not been done to give way to an election now, because of the IBC has not been in place for a long time, one can have those bottlenecks, and the secretariat alone will be hesitant to actually do those things, because even in terms of who appoints the presiding officers, the returning officers, it's not the secretariat, it is the commission itself. So yes, I can see where the argument is coming from, because truly it is where the result really comes. But is that the role of the commissions? And therefore, can there be a commission without commissioners? Can the secretariat alone be a commission? And of course, according to the law now, the new law, the entire commission announces the results. The entire commission, not just the chair. They must have concurrence. So I think that is an area for further discussion. And Eric can weigh onto that as well. Can there be a parallel transitional council? You see, this movement, like how I said in Makwene, we had also a people's government, and it was able to, it could do anything, that the government did. It could bring all those ideas, because we thought this is an Article 1 county. So it depends on how the Gen Zs organize themselves, so that through these expresses, through whatever else they create, will be able to continue their advocacy and to continue what they want to do to achieve the result that they want to achieve. And of course, ultimately, whatever decisions are taken, it comes down to how are they enforced. Like now, even what has been considered, how is it enforced? So that there have to be those mechanisms of doing that kind of stuff. And also to protect oneself from being told now you are doing treason. But of course, when citizens say that we have Article 1 power and we can, when we delegate authority to you, if you do some of those things like we don't want, and we go to the Ministry of Health and we go to wherever else we go, we withdraw, I think that is what is being contested, and that is something new on the African continent. The impeachment, our president is impeached through parliament. And parliament has the ways of what it must do and what numbers are required and all that kind of stuff. But of course, given the nature of our current parliament, it would not be easy to see how the parliament would be able to take on such a task, even when citizens require it, or when there is reason, especially in terms of how one implements or does not implement the constitution. But I think what you're doing in terms of creating more and more avenues for discussion, and also this thing I suggested about some relying on some technical people in every area that you want to raise a point, whether it is in agriculture, whether it is in law, whether it is whatever, just sourcing information, including even from the diaspora. I think those are important things. And of course, to know that when one wants to change their country fundamentally, it is done. It's a long job. It's a long haul. It is not something to think that you'll do it tomorrow. It takes, particularly when you want to change the institutions, the culture, the policies, the laws, the all works. And that is why, to finalize, I've been very happy to see that the agencies themselves are focusing on even changing themselves in terms of the Kenya that they want. So that if it is, if you do wrong, they criticize you among them, each other. They are persistent. They go to these demonstrations. You don't see the looting by them. You don't see, when they say that people shouldn't be corrupt, you don't see them wanting to do that. There's empathy. They raise money for those who have fallen and those who are unwell. You see, you must, like Mahatma Gandhi said, create within yourselves the society that you want. And I think I can see that happening. And even when people go to those demonstrations, and sometimes it spills a little into during the night, people don't drink, and they don't, the boys don't abuse the girls, they protect them. And it's important for you to create even within yourselves the new society that you want all of us to have. Thank you very much.
Professor, before you go, one more question about the indictment I asked about the president. Can he be charged, or is he above the law?
According to the constitution, if you do anything against the constitution, you cannot be above the law. So it's a question of demonstrating what is it that the president or anybody, which is, because like an impeachment is to get him out, but to get out a president whom, if you think that they have done wrong things, I would imagine, and Eric will also weigh on that. I would imagine that according to our constitution now, you cannot be against, above the law when the things that according to our integrity chapter of the constitution, if there are things that are against the constitution, you can only be protected like if it's civil things or some criminal something. But I think when you're if you fundamentally abuse the constitution, then I don't think there is being above the law.
Guys, I'm in a very noisy place, so at times I might not be able to speak, but I'd like to bring Eric on the space immediately after Professor Eric. Wherever you are ready, kindly, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'd actually logged in so that I can just follow the proceedings. And, Professor Kivutha Kibwana is a luminary in terms of leadership, in terms of his well-documented fight and support for constitutionalism in this country. And so I thought that this was a discussion that I wouldn't want to miss, and I logged in for that purpose. But of course, I may just want to say one or two things in terms of some of the questions that have been posed. And I think we may want to begin with the last question that was posed to Professor Kibwana in terms of the immunity that the president enjoys while in office. I think this is one of the issues that the court did make a pronouncement on the BBI case, and several courts have made similar pronouncements. In terms of Article 143 of the Constitution, the president, for the time being, as is in office, enjoys protection, or rather has immunity from any criminal proceedings. And I think if there are any, then they have to await when he gets out of office. And again, he is protected in terms of civil proceedings for anything that he does in the exercise of his powers under the Constitution. And so it becomes extremely difficult to bring a successful case against an existing president for any of the transgressions, be they criminal or civil, while he sits in office. And this also has to be taken into context with jurisprudence that is coming from other countries. Or you may not know that the Supreme Court also, the Supreme Court of the United States did make certain pronouncements with regards to presidential immunity on certain issues touching on their president, or rather their former president, Donald Trump. And so there are all those considerations that have to be taken when anyone wants to institute a certain action. But then again, I think that we should not always be restricted to our local fora. There are other fora in which certain challenges may be made, depending on the nature of claim that one would want to institute, against a sitting president. But that said and done, whichever avenue one seek, because of the nature and profile and stature of the office of the presidency, definitely there will be several legal hurdles that someone has to overcome before they are able to successfully bring such an action. Let me just also say something with regards to the question that is oft posed in terms of IBC and whether elections can actually be conducted by the returning officers. And I think that the understanding that I have of the Maina Kiai case is that the result is actually at the polling station. And the issue about that is to protect the sanctity of the result and to cure the misadventure that has existed prior, that was highlighted in the Kriegler report, about results changing as they transit from one polling station and go to Nairobi, where ideally was the commission would be best to give the final result, so that it should be final at the polling station, but the finality is with regards to us to cure the aspect of election result manipulation. But if you can, it will be a bit difficult and tenuous also to draw a corollary, in the sense that if the result is at the polling station and that the polling station is under the exclusive control and jurisdiction of the returning officer at that particular level, and for the Senate, the returning officer at the county level, and that therefore, by extension, it would mean that they can then conduct elections. That in itself, I think, is an argument that may not be able to stand in consideration of when you are interpreting certain provisions of the law. You look at the mischief behind the law, so that it is not a more of a lateral interpretation, that if the results is final and is declared by the returning officer, then this returning officer can actually conduct the election. The election, as the courts have often held, is a process, and so there's a long process in terms of voter registration, verification of the voter register, and printing of the ballot papers, clearing of the candidates, and all those processes cannot be undertaken in the absence of the commissioners, because you have to look at it in the sense of the totality. There has to be a vacancy declared. That vacancy, if we are conducting by election, then the vacancy has to be declared, has to be gazetted, and those are things that have to be done by the commission. And so I think that it's an interesting legal argument, but one that may eventually not stand, in view of the fact that there are other processes that are concerned in an election, other than just the actual act of casting a ballot and counting it and declaring it, that cannot be conducted by the returning officers, and has to be, at a collective, be handled by the commissioners, of course, given technical and administrative support by the secretariat. So again, quite a number of cases have dealt with those issues. The Supreme Court, in its latter decision, the one that cleared Ruto in 2022, also looked at that issue and made certain declarations about the commission acting with all the commissioners present. And so those are, again, issues that would, again, create problems for us. When we come to the recall clause that is in the Constitution, in terms of Article 1 of 4, of the Constitution. Again, we find ourselves in a similar situation where we have the Constitution giving us that right, but we get to that point when you come to sub-article 2, which says that Parliament needs to enact the legislation that would give the grounds. And then Parliament did so, but sort of, in a way, expanded those grounds in a manner that then defeated the provision that was in the Constitution, and of course that was challenged in court, and the court actually did agree that that section is unconstitutional. So we are left at that place where perhaps we may need again to innovate and to try and see how we deal with that. Ultimately, we now come back to Article 1, which all of us are talking about and agitating, and then there is no doubt, absolutely no doubt whatsoever, that power belongs to the people, because that is what Article 1 says, and there's good reason why that is Article 1 of the Constitution. It reaffirms the authority of the Kenyan people, and it goes in line with the constitutional doctrine that all of us have power to govern ourselves, but we donate that power to other entities that we create so that they can exercise it in trust and ensure that all of us are able to get to Canaan. And I remember, the words of Martin Luther King when he was talking about this, and he was basically saying that it's like we have put our money into a bank, and the power that the Constitution then is like a guarantee that every time we ask for our money from the bank, it will never come back unpaid. And so I think that what is happening right now is, and I've had quite a number of people talk about the question of trust. I think right now we are saying that basically there appears to be an element of deficiency of trust, and so therefore perhaps a situation has arisen for the people to then exercise their power directly. Again, from a very legal standpoint, that creates a little bit of a challenge, because when you read Article 1, it basically says that although the power belongs to the people, it has to also be exercised in accordance with the Constitution. And then, but there is the aspect of directly, and other people would argue that the aspect of direct exercise of power is at the ballot, and then indirectly through the elected officials and other institutions that are set up within the Constitution for that purpose. And then again, we will look too of the Constitution in terms of its supremacy, and the argument that may come in that any other action that then appears to be outside the Constitution, or one that usurps the constitutional authority of certain offices, may again be unconstitutional. And of course, for the lawyers, and Kivuta Kibona might be, of course, is probably much more aware, constitutional change of the Constitution, so that again, we get into an area of diverse legal arguments in terms of how can we be able to do this and do that. But the one thing that I want to say is that I don't think all is lost, because for the first time, I think we have gotten to a point where everyone in this country, and I'm not just talking about the Gen Zs, but everyone in this country has come to actually appreciate that people actually matter, that the views of the people actually matter, that people can actually come together and they can agitate for what is right, and that those who, for political expediency, think that certain things cannot happen. We have really turned a moment in this country where we are almost certain that this is a new era in terms of accountability. And I would want to see this agitation and see whether this agitation can be structured in a way that will then be seeking for greater accountability in terms of how our resources are utilized. If you look at, for example, the reports that have come from the Auditor General, some of the reports that have come from the Controller of Budget, years and years go by. All of them have been highlighting several cases of misuse of resources, but they have never been highlighted as it has been highlighted in this space. And I think that if we can be able to look at it and try and say that, yes, we are where we are in terms of our leadership and in terms of the crisis that we are in, if we can find a mechanisms to sustain this so that there is greater scrutiny and accountability in terms of all the challenges that we are facing. And I say this because, for example, there are people, and I think and sought to to ask the court as a way of us as a person exercising his sovereign power to be able to access the SGR contracts and the financing agreements that have been made around the SGR, and eventually to be able to access that. Now, if you look at that and you look at the reports that have come from the Auditor General in terms of the audit of the public debt, you again see that the Auditor General seems to be suggesting that there are things that are not right in that process, that, there are certain documents that are probably not available for scrutiny, that they're financing certain financing agreements and are not probably up to date. And so I think that a higher level of scrutiny, and people have always said that the price of democracy is, and I paraphrase it, is eternal vigilance. So if we